are going live. So we should be live in Facebook or YouTube. What's up, YouTube? Just wait until can confirm it and we will start the show. Perfect. We're inside the stream, I think. All right, there we are. And here we go. Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. As you know, we are currently overcoming the insane censorship. So if you want to support this show, please share the episodes as far as you can. Become a member at mattbelair.com so you can sign up to the email list, but you can also become a member. You can do so by free or by donation. But the most important thing you can do is consider doing 3 kind acts wherever you are in the world today. Today's guest is a physician, Sufi Master Healer, and spiritual guide pioneering spiritual healing in the Sufi way, which is the integration of Western medicine and spiritual practices to heal disease and other sufferings. He travels worldwide teaching Sufi spiritual healing, a heart-based approach to the spiritual healing of illness in the subtle realms, and has taught at the United Nations and Harvard Divinity School. He received his medical degree as a general practice physician from the University of Illinois. He is the author of the international bestseller, God's Way, Sufi Spiritual Healing. Welcome to the show, Dr. Ibrahim Jaffe.
Thank you, Matt. I'm very happy to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation today, and hopefully we'll bring a little light to this world. We need it right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited to have you on the show. I looked at the title and I was like, yes, we got to have this guy on because, I'm so interested that you called it Sufism, right? That's the pronunciation.
Yes.
I think a lot of people are familiar with Rumi, and I haven't dove deep into it, so I don't know that much around it. So I'm excited to have you on to educate us. And just for those who aren't familiar with your work, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to write the book?
Yeah. Well, I was doing my residency in Chicago, and they brought in a Jewish girl. She was 17. She had end stage hepatitis. She was dying, and when sorry, my Siri's coming on here. And anyways, I ended up being her ICU doctor, and I was watching her go down the tubes quickly. And one of the things that was really interesting was that when I would take my stethoscope and I would put it on her heart to listen to her, there was like something really bad came out of her. I didn't understand it at the time, but I remember it would come out, come into my arms and my body, and it was so powerful that I would like literally kind of like curl up like this and then almost like fall down in pain. It was so agonizing. And I understood that was something deeply wrong here, but I didn't understand what that was because I always, as a doctor, you deal with death all the time. But this was something different, and there was something else going on. So around that time, the Orthodox Jewish community in Chicago spoke to the head rabbi in Jerusalem, and he said that there was a healing for hepatitis in the Talmud, which is a Jewish sacred book. So I said, okay, let's find out what that's about. So the rabbis came into the hospital. They were permitted in. They came in with a box of 30 doves, and I was going to miss it for anything. I want to see what's going to happen here. But the hospital went crazy. I mean, the doctors were furious. The nurses were furious. They said, how could you bring these dirty animals into the ICU? But I wanted to see what was happening because I cared about this girl. Anyways, they put the dove on top of the girl's belly button. They did some prayers, and then the dove fell over dead in about 3 seconds. And apparently what was happening was the dove was pulling out the negativity that was in the hepatitis. It was getting pulled into the dove. The dove would die, and it would take the disease with it subtly. So I watched them go through 18 doves over the next 3 hours, and it was actually incredible to watch. And the thing that was most incredible was that the nurse was fixing the what they call the levofed. It's one of the medicines which controls the blood pressure. Every time the dove died, the levofed was reduced and reduced and reduced. So as we were getting actually immediate physical confirmation of the healing going on because of the decreasing of the blood pressure started coming up, the levofed came down, everything began to normalize. It was incredible to watch. Around the end of it, at the 18th bird, she was not healed yet. When all the doctors went after the chief of medicine, they said, "You have allowed, psittacosis, disease into the ICU. You've got to take these birds out of here now, or we'll, have you removed as chief of medicine." So they came in and packed everybody up. The rabbis left, the doves left. They left her in the middle of this healing, which was incomplete. So it was an incomplete healing, but I got to watch something extraordinary happen, which was the transmutation of energy and light through these doves, albeit they had to die, which was very sad. But nevertheless, they were saving the life of this girl. So that changed my life. After watching that, I realized that there was a whole world. Here we were, in Chicago, one of the best places in medicine in the country, and they couldn't figure out how to heal this girl. And some ancient 3,000-year-old Talmudic dove remedy starts to heal the girl. I mean, that was a pretty powerful statement of what we don't know. And I said to myself, if I really have taken an oath to heal people, and I've just seen something that is extraordinary, that there are other forms of healing that work, then isn't it my obligation, if I want to give my parents, my people, my parents, everybody the best possible, physician I could be? Isn't it my duty to go out and explore alternative methods of healing and bring it back into medicine? Because I was a doctor, I didn't want to leave medicine, but I didn't want to limit it because we weren't healing. I mean, we weren't doing anything. There were other things that were helping. So I think to find a way to integrate, the non-spiritual, the spiritual, the healing, the alternative, the herbs, bringing it all together. Look, if I'm sick, I want the best chance to heal. I don't want to be pigeonholed in some, put me in this route, and you have a 10% chance of healing. I mean, what's the point? It's like I'd rather be able to open my doors and maybe there's another chance to help me with the whole process. So that's how it started for me, and I've spent the last 40 years exploring alternative health. I studied with Philippine psychic surgeons, had my hands inside of people's bodies. I've studied with Mexican shamans and been in the deserts of Monterrey, Mexico. I've been out with the American Indians. I've studied with some of the Apaches, some of the Sioux. I've been in different places around the world, Japanese Zen monasteries, Tibetan monasteries, learning all types of healing. So, at the end of the day, I found Sufism, and Sufism was the pinnacle for me of the whole process. So that's why I've been in Sufism now 25 years. But Sufism was, for me, it was the pinnacle. It was the final piece that I needed to put together to understand the healing process, which I think I have understood, although be it, I would say nobody ever masters it, but it is a never-ending process, but it's incredible.
Holy smokes. Well, I didn't think it was going to start like that. I didn't know that it came from, what you might say is some sort of like mystical experience or something that's not really understood. And what it reminds me of is I read a book. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's, Mad Bear. And a friend gave it to me because I've studied with some Indigenous elders too. Are you familiar with the book?
I think so. Yeah, I think I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so in there, he's this, Native American healer, and there's a story where the guy's kind of following him around. I think he's a psychiatrist or something like that. He's in academia, and so he'd become friends with him. Said he observed once where he had healed a girl that was dead on the road, like she was proper dead, and people are crying, and he did something and brought her back to life. And he said later in the book, he had met this person from Japan that was supposed to be this healer person who had the ancient wisdom as well, and they recognized each other, so they had some sort of special bond, and he had the whatever it is, that knowledge or that gift, which is something that it seems like out of Doctor Strange, or it's not common. And I know from my time studying with the Indigenous elders, I don't know where that information is. Number one, they don't want to share it with us probably because of what's happened. And this is just about the Native American community that I understand. Number one, they probably don't want to share it. And that's what Clifford and David tell me because of the history. Number two, a lot of it might have to be hidden from all the stuff that's happened. So this isn't like you can go to the library and figure it out. But from being on this podcast and exploring the world, I've heard of countless stories, either where someone comes in and does it, or has learned from someone or experienced it themselves. So where do we go from here? I'm so curious where you're where I even kind of go, because your book looks really interesting. And so how did what did you learn about medicine that was different, I guess? Like where do you think we should go? I'm kind of like I want the mystical stories and I like doing that, but I also like being practical for the guests listening. How do we apply that and master our own healing?
Well, I think we need a comprehensive understanding of healing, which is, something I can share, with people. Although I have to be honest with you, I've never raised the dead. So I'm sure there's a whole bunch of pieces in there that are still waiting to open for me. And I hope one day that I'll have the blessing of being involved in that. But anyways, the bottom line is this, that all disease essentially comes as a way for people to return to the oneness. Okay, so yeah, that's the basic understanding, which is that all disease is a sign of something being off center inside the person. They've left their alignment. They've left the connectedness to the unity, to the oneness, to God, whatever you want to call it. They've left it for some reason, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. Disease actually can be a very good thing. It's there to help. So disease comes as a way to teach people what they forgot or what they don't know or how to get back. And once you learn it, generally disease goes. Now, not always, but generally it goes. Okay. So the real teachings, and this is what I love about Sufism. Sufism, it means to purify or to have purity. One purifies their body, their ego, their self, their heart, their soul, their spirit. And in the purification process, they come back into a state of divine oneness. And if it's, it may just be the liver, and so there may just be that piece. They've got to learn to clear that liver, or maybe it's the heart, or maybe it's the throat, or something like that. But once you understand what needs to be purified, and you act and you purify it, frequently you get healed. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to say is that I am very pro medicine. I'm not against medicine at all. I'm pro medicine. I'm a physician myself. Medicine is incredibly valuable in protecting you. It helps you. But medicine does not generally cure you, not really. What it does is it helps you. You have high blood pressure. You take high blood pressure pills, your blood pressure normalizes. You have not healed your blood pressure. What you've done is you've protected yourself from having a stroke or a heart attack. That's what you've done. So if you really want to heal, the way I look at it is take your blood pressure medicine, right? Because if you don't, you might have a stroke. By the same token, do your healing work, because if you haven't got to the roots of why you have high blood pressure, you're going to have that the rest of your life and it's going to get worse. So it's better you learn to work on it and heal it. So for me, it's a combination. You're going to bring all these systems together with wisdom and protect the person. But at the end of the day, the key is that they have to come back to the oneness of God. They have to get back there. And I can give you a lot of situations about what that means, but that's basically the overview.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I've heard that before, and it definitely resonates with me because I have spoken to a lot of people who have had quote unquote miraculous healings, and it really is about that inner healing. And one of the things I heard before was that when we have these traumas or these things in our life that are very challenging, they can be stored in the body. And so if they think about the memory where that pain was, maybe it was abuse or maybe some deep regret or whatever it is, that you'd say, oh, I feel it in my gut. And then all of a sudden they get a really terrible illness in their gut or in their chest, wherever they might hold that. And I feel like philosophically it kind of makes sense because we're not really taught how to process those things. And so in your book, it talks about, I like the chapter headings where it says outer experiences are spiritual teachings, and also unresolved inner spiritual issues are the glue that holds illness in place. And the one constant that I've learned from interviewing a lot of people and speaking to people is that if they had cancer or a terminal illness, they had to come down to homeostasis, where they were in a high stress or they were right out of alignment with their life. Right? Maybe they were doing a job they hated. It was fast paced. They were, everything was out of whack. And so one of the things they had to do was they had to come to peace within themselves. They had to realign their life around simplicity, but not high stress. You know what I mean? And also self love and self care. They had to care for themselves again. And so I'd love for you to speak on those ideas and if it's what you've come to the conclusion to as well.
Yeah, I mean that's all, that's kind of like the terrain. You know what I mean? In other words, that no matter when you're sick, you've got to get rid of the stress, you've got to eat well, you've got to get rid of the toxicities, whatever they are. Sometimes those toxicities are your relationship. Sometimes you're in a relationship that's, you're going through a lot of hurt or anger or pain, divorce, whatever. Those things can really be destructive. So sometimes you have to get all those things worked out. But then the next thing is the deeper piece, which is, what are you really there to learn? That's what my book is really about. What's God trying to show you? It's like disease is God knocking on your door. It's God saying to you, hey, beloved, you missed this, and I want to show it to you. You know, so I'll give you a couple examples of what I'm talking about, which is we had one lady with breast cancer. She they had scheduled her for I think it was a mastectomy. I believe it was not a lumpectomy. I think it was a mastectomy. It's about 15 years ago. Anyway, she called me and she said, "What do you think, Ibrahim? What do you think this is all about?" And I said, "Well, when I looked into it, and I prayed and meditated, I saw images of people yelling at her. But you see, that's sort of the causative level, but the real causative level is why they yell at her, what's she doing with it, why did that happen?" So she was saying that. She said to me, I said, "Well, what's going on? Well, who's angry at you?" She said, "Oh, my students." She's a teacher. "They're angry at me, and I think they're the cause of my cancer." But when I looked deep, I said, "Well, is it possible that the real issue is that you're angry at them, that you haven't dealt with your anger, you haven't dealt with your projections, and it's actually been reversed? The real problem is inside of you." You see? And when I prayed about it, I went to God and I asked, "What is this about?" I kept seeing the word compassion, which was that the teaching for her was to be compassionate, to be merciful, not to be indignant and angry because people weren't, obeying her or accepting her as her teacher. So, anyways, to make a long story short, at first she fought me. She said, "No, you're wrong. It's all about them. It's their problem. They're doing it." And then she sat with it for a few weeks. And then she finally called me back and she said, "No, I think you're right. I think actually I'm really aggressive and I'm really attacking them and I really don't accept them. And this is really about me." And she got inside herself and she saw that she was pretty, I don't want to say ruthless, but there was definitely a hard edge there. And she took care of it. I mean, she really sat down. She said, I'm not going to be like this anymore. I want to change it." She sat down. She used some of the Sufi healing processes. She changed it, and she developed mercy. Well, when she went back to the hospital, which was about 2 months later for the mastectomy, the tumor had completely disappeared. It was gone.
Wow. That's amazing. And it definitely coincides with a lot of people when they talk about healing and health. You need to get to the root of the cause. It's like if you are, very overweight and you can go get liposuction and your health isn't great. You can go chop off all that fat, but if you keep the same, mental, emotional, spiritual, dietary, habitual patterns, you're going to recreate that result. It's not going to help you. So, right, you said the medicine can help prevent something worse when you catch it, and it's a signal, right? The body is always speaking to you. And so, your book outlines so many amazing chapters, and I don't know what we'll have time for. I want to cover it all, but you talk about the four oceans of light, and there's an alignment method. So I definitely want you to cover that. And there's specifically too, I don't want to miss this, but you know, there's discovering the voice of God and the ultimate goal of spirit. All these things are really fascinating to me. And the rainbow light of God, as I scroll through your book, I'm like, this is very fascinating stuff. So you let me know what the meat and potatoes are so we can go through those processes and tools, but I definitely want to dive deep into some of that stuff, into just if you have seen or experienced directly, like the hand of God, if you will, you know what I mean? Like it goes beyond, for me, it's something that's unexplainable, and you witness it. And that's why I know there's some sort of force, because I have witnessed it firsthand, and or experienced it directly. Like that is so beyond anything mind. There's something. And so then how do we integrate with that wave? It'd be kind of like a surfer, you know what I mean? It's just like this wave is nuts. And then you learn how to surf that wave, and it's like all of this power, but you're kind of working with it. But if you work against it, that wave will mess you up. Even a little tiny wave can really kick your butt. And actually, you know about boating and maybe sailing, so I'm sure there's some analogies there too.
Great questions. I mean, here's the basic foundational teaching. The why we're here is to come back to God. Okay, and you can call that what you want. You can call enlightenment or unity or self-realization, whatever you want to call it. But the bottom line is we're on our way back to knowing God. Okay, and the teachings in life are about getting us back into a state of oneness. And in Sufism, we call that unity. It's a state that's similar to enlightenment, but it's a little different because it comes from the heart and it's from love. It's a flowering of love that comes out of the heart. So in Sufism, we're working to bring the heart back into the state of love that brings us into a state of unity and oneness. That's what Rumi was all about. Rumi was talking about, he caught it better than any human being that I know, about how to, through how love changes the human spirit. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing to know is that God will heal people when God wants, not when we want. So people, are praying and they're demanding and they're asking God for healing. God doesn't always give healing. And in my experience, there are conditions to having healing. And the conditions for healing are that we understand what God wants us to know and that we make the change. Okay, so, and the change comes out of free will. We can't be forced to change. We have free will here. It happens when we've chosen to change. That's the real question. How do you help somebody change? How do you help someone to make a choice that makes it different? How do you choose not to be angry? How do you choose not to be afraid? You know what I mean? That's the real secret of the whole thing. So in Sufism, it starts with the heart, and this is something most people in the West, we're very mental. We're much in our minds. We don't know how to live in our hearts. And the heart is the key to our reality. The heart is where our essence, our soul lives. It's where our being lives. It comes from our heart. It doesn't come from our minds. So the first step is we've got to get people into their hearts, and we have to show them why they don't want to live there. What's going on inside of them that they left their hearts. Usually, they're brokenhearted. Something happened with their parents or their family or their girlfriend or their boyfriend or whatever it may be, but something happens in there, and because of that, they left. They left the love. They have to come back to that. So the first thing is we get them into their hearts. And then the second thing is we get them to experience the love. And then from the place of love, they begin to look at what's going on inside of their hearts. The heart's like the master gland, connects to every cell in the body. So anything going on, it could be happening in your little toe, it's coming out of your heart. It could be happening in the top of your head and your brain, it's coming out of your heart. Your heart's the master gland. It starts in the heart. So we have to bring the person back to understanding what's going on inside of them, what's happened in the heart, because that's the first thing that turned away, that went out of alignment. Then something else did. So I'll give you an example. Again, I had a boy come to me. He was 17. He had astrocytoma. Astrocytoma is a big brain tumor, and he was dying pretty heavily. And for me, I wanted to understand. I needed to understand that brain tumor if I was going to have any hope of helping it. He'd been to chemo, radiation, nothing worked. They were basically getting ready to bury him. Well, when I sat with him, I wanted to get to know the brain tumor. I wanted to know what God was making. And I asked him about it, and basically said to me, I'm peaceful, I have no problems, I don't know why I'm sick, doesn't make any sense. But in my heart, I knew that wasn't the case. I knew that there was something else going on. So I prayed about it. I asked, I said, God, what is going on in this boy's heart? And when I asked the question, what I saw was a conflict between goodness and violence. That one part of him was very good, and one part of him was extremely violent. And I said to him, tell me about your violence. And he said, I'm not violent. I'm not violent at all. I'm only love. I'm only love. And I said, finally, I said, look, I asked his parents, they were in the room. I said, can you leave? I want to talk to him privately. The parents stepped out. And I said, come on, let's be honest between you and me. Your parents are gone. What's going on? Then he looked around for a while, rolled his eyes, and then he said, okay, I'll tell you the truth. He said, all I can think about is killing people. All I can think about is going to war. I want to go and I want to kill people. I can't stop it. It's coming out of my being. I don't know where it's from. I don't know why it's here, but I can't stop it. You see how much denial was going on initially, and how the whole thing was such a charade in a way, because parents were beautiful. They couldn't accept that type of thing. But this was what was going on in him. Maybe this was a counterbalance for teaching the parents about light and dark, because they both exist together. Anyway, the boy was playing this out. So we started working with the violence in him. He wasn't ready to deal with it. The parents weren't ready to deal with it. They left. They chose not to go through the work. They went home. But the boy continued to understand that his brain tumor had to do with beliefs around violence. As he began to clear it, it was amazing, because he didn't make it. He did die. But the death process he went through was one of the most spectacular deaths I've ever seen. It was, if you can imagine a room full of angels and light and trumpets blowing, this kid had that. It was one of the most magnificent deaths I've ever seen in my life. That somehow, even though he died, he had a major breakthrough at the end that helped him to reach God, and the death was magnificent. So my point of all of it is that God is trying to teach us, and all of us are basically under God's hands, all of us. And if we go out of alignment, then God tries to bring us back into alignment through dropping a book in our hand, or teaching us something. Somebody shows up, a teacher, but sooner or later illness will show up. And illness is one of the ways God teaches. It's a powerful way of teaching, because if you're really sick, like I was, you're dying, you better heal it, otherwise you're dead. It forces you to look at what you don't want to look at. That's the beauty of illness. Anyways, I talked a long time. Let me turn it back to you.
Yeah, holy smokes. What a wild story. That is, man, your stories are good. I'm like, do we go to more stories, or do we go into some of the other stuff? Well, I would love for you to speak about the method, because I feel like that's important. I think it's APIARTB, that whatever that acronym stands for. And then we can dive into a little bit more about these things about, discovering the voice of God and the rainbow light of God, because I think I agree with what you're saying. I've when I was in British Columbia once, I met some parents that had lost their 1-year-old daughter, and I don't remember if it was a son or daughter, but just listening to their story and how they were moving through that, it's such a wild experience. Now becoming a parent, it's like your heart is on your sleeve. You can't do anything about it. You know what I mean? It's such a raw and vulnerable place to be, as a parent, and you only want the best for them. And so to hear their process and some of the things that they shared about that was really powerful and beautiful and challenging in so many different ways. And so, yeah, I think it all comes down to this understanding that we're in a spiritual realm or a school or something, and it's beyond our control. But what we can control is understanding our inner world and that meaning and how we project those things that come out, because we don't control what we look like, what family we're born into. Some of the external things, they just happen to teach us. But a lot of the time, like you said, through illness, that is a signal from the creator, for you to look in and see what is going on here, and so it is an indicator and kind of like a knock on the door. Just like, you might have one small illness come, and if you don't listen, it's going to turn into something much worse, right? And so, yeah, I'd love for you to speak on, yeah, the method or the acronym that you teach as well.
Okay, well, the way it worked for me, we talked about the four worlds, right? The four oceans. There are four subtle realms that exist, in my understanding.
Those are the
Uh,
four oceans.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, and so you understand the APIAR process, you have to kind of understand the four oceans. So the first ocean is the ocean of senses and self, and anything we can sense, hear, listen, smell, taste, touch. We call that the mulk, means thick. The second ocean is a field of light that surrounds us like this, but it also goes out and surrounds all the universe. We call that the malakut. Malakut means the realm of the angels. Okay, it's basically the subtle reality. Okay, most healing happens in the malakut. Then past that, around us, there's another much larger light, which we call the Jabarut. The Jabarut is the world of the soul, and we are surrounded by that ocean of the soul, but also everything in existence has a soul. So the world of the Jabarut is universal. It goes throughout all of existence. Okay, and then the final fourth ocean is called the Lahut. Lahut means the world of God, and the world of God is the final world that you have to enter into to reach the unity. You have to merge into that world. Christians call it the heavens, Muslims call it paradise. I don't actually know what the Jewish people call it, but it's the world of God. Okay, so within those four worlds, there are teachings. Okay, so the APIAR process essentially teaches us how to get into any of those four worlds to find out what's going on inside of somebody. If somebody's sick, they don't know what's going on, bottom line. It's unconscious. If it wasn't unconscious, they wouldn't be sick. It's something happening below their conscious. They may be somewhat aware of it, but they're not really aware of it. It's hidden in their bodies, as you said. It's hidden in their subconscious. Okay, so APIAR is an acronym, and in Sufism, a pure is a master. So I kind of was playing with it. So I said, APIAR, a master, teaches beautifully. Let the series jump in here again, and but so what it means is that A stands for our connection and alignment with God. Okay, so you have to, in this system, you're not healing from anything other than God's light. You're not healing from spirit animal. You're not healing from Hopi Kachinas. You're not healing from, I don't know what, David. You're healing directly from the light of God itself. That's why I say it was the capstone for me, because I studied those other things, but there was something missing always. I was like, well, this is all good, but there's something beyond all this. What's beyond it? But what's beyond it is God. Okay, so the alignment with God, you have to align with God, and you have to allow that light to come all the way through you, to really move inside of you and open inside of you and to exist within you. So the first step is to have that alignment with the divine. The second step is to use that alignment to find the pattern. Okay, pattern is the subtle light that creates disease. So anytime you have a disease in the subtle body, an energetic pattern shows up. Okay, now people who can see auras see them all the time. Healers see them frequently. Any master who's really a master sees them. They show up all the time. These are patterns of light that show up around the person so that you see that pattern. So for me, I spend, when I heal, I always start with God, and I ask God to show me the pattern that's causing the illness within those four oceans surrounding somebody. That's where I start. Okay. The third thing is the eye of images. When you open a pattern, inside of it, you will find the images that are the source of why a person gets sick. And also how they create their life. It's not only why they get sick, it's how their life is being created. It's what's going on deep in their subconscious that they are creating from. They're creating from those hidden images, and they're choosing their relationships to those images in different ways. I'll explain that as we go. After you have the images, you have your issues, the second eye. The issues are about your response to how you deal with the images. Okay, so for example, um, do you accept them? Do you stop with them? Do you fight with them? Do you not want to deal with them? Do you run away from them? Are you angry about them? Are you frightened by them? What's your relationship to the images? Okay, so the issues are very important because the issues are actually the glue. The images are the illness, but the issues are the glue, and they work together. They stick together. You've got to be able to have them both, okay, and clear them both. Once you get through the understandings, now you have to resolve it. The R is resolution. How do you resolve it? Well, there's a million ways to do it. You can clear images and issues in, 1,000 different ways. This system, we clear it using God's names. We work with the light of God, with the attributes of God, and we clear out those images and those issues, and we replace them with divine light. And that's the resolution. How do you clear them and replace them with divine light so the person becomes holy inside? The T is the teachings of the soul. Every healing is there for a person to learn something about their soul. The soul is needing to learn something. So the T is the teachings of the soul. And the B, once we understand the teachings and we heal, then God sends down like light, beautiful waterfalls of light come down. That's the ultimate healing. When that light comes down, nothing can stop it. I mean, that's the highest level of healing. So for me, I use medicine and all sorts of other things to protect the person while I'm trying to get to that downpouring of the beautification of light. And once that happens, then basically the process is over and they heal for good. That's the APIAR teaches beautifully.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. What a fascinating way to it's a little bit different than mainstream medicine diagnosis. So
Is it?
that's incredibly powerful. And I think it's also powerful that, you're going around learning all these different methods of healing from, different traditions. And then the next level is back to God. And I just feel like that's an interesting thing because for me and just what's been going on in the world, it's been yeah, I believe in spirit, God, nature, the creator, but it's like more so, it's like, oh, okay, really just connecting with this one thing, like go directly to the source. And I feel like that's kind of what the method is understanding yourself and that connection with the greater creator, however you see that, but in a real way for you. Some people might be averse to these different names or these different traditions or religions because of, what's happened with different religions in the past with the wars and the things like that. But it doesn't take away from you and your connection from the creator in whatever way that is, because you can find that whatever it is for you will be your own interpretation, your own understanding. And we all have that. And it feels like some of our culture or our world really is designed to make us forget that, who we are, where we came from, and what power we're connected to, and what's possible when we really connect to that. So I think that that's incredibly beautiful. And I'd love for you to speak about the, what is it, the seven primary spiritual stations. That to me sounds fascinating.
Okay. That's a good question. It's a great question.
Yeah, and if there's anything you want to comment on or take it, you can feel free to go ahead too, because there's a lot of I like to go as deep as possible. So if you've got some, with you, it's like holy smokes, where do you even go with this? This is awesome.
Well, again, first of all, everybody can master this. It's not something that's like beyond, like for somebody and not for somebody else. Some people have to work a little harder for different reasons, but bottom line, if you can get to those images and those issues and resolve it with divine light, most people get, a fair degree of healing, if not complete healing. So that's the first thing to understand. The second thing is that Our relationship with the divine is like the whole key to the whole thing. Okay, so we talked about the 7 stations. Each station brings more power, more light, more love, more understanding, more wisdom, and more healing. So when you talk about, people raising the dead, these, if they're doing that, there's only 2 ways it's happening. Either they're very high masters, or they're tapping into other beings that can do it and are somehow doing it through them. So it's one way or the other that it happens. In either case, for the human being to reach those 7 stations, that's what it's really all about. So let's talk about the stations. So we're gonna say 7 stations, but we're gonna talk about the 4th one as the fulcrum point. Okay, so think of like a teeter-totter, the 3 below and the 3 above. Okay, the 4th station we call hakika. Hakika means that you have reached the unity. You have reached divine oneness.
And this comes from Sufism?
Yes.
Got it.
But I'll tell you something, I have friends of mine who are Vedantists, and they have this almost the identical system. So it's not only in Sufism. Okay. So there is a realm called the realm of God, which is the realm of divine truth. Okay, what's divine truth? Well, divine truth is different than human truth. Like human truth, you think of the seven blind guys on the elephant. They cross the river and they stumble into an elephant. And one guy grabs the tail and he says, an elephant is long and skinny. And another guy grabs the trunk. He says, no, he's powerful and twirly. Another guy grabs the leg. He says, no, he's got a big, wide strength. So they all have these different understandings, and they're all truthful, right? They're all the truth. But the divine truth is it's an elephant. It's all the pieces put together. Okay, so divine truth is bigger than human truth. It's bigger than the small truths. It's the combination of all truths. Okay, so in the world of Hakika, you're given divine truth. You're given a penetrating look into the divine reality that allows you to stay in that reality and live in that reality all the time. A lot of people, they touch it. I bet you've touched it, where you've had moments of that experience of unity. And yet, it's one thing to touch it. We have to also hold it. We have to live there. We have to be part of it forever. So Hakika is about reaching that state. Okay. So the lower 3 stations are about the walking through the self, the choices of self, knowing the self. Like, what does yourself really want? Where is yourself choosing things that are not the best for you? Where does yourself choose materialism or the world or something other than divinity? Because as long as yourself chooses that, you're not gonna enter into those higher worlds. It pulls you back. Okay, so the first station is overcoming yourself. The second station, which again is different than some systems, because our system is through the heart. The second station, the heart bows to God and it bows to the love. And in the bowing, the heart opens into the state of what we call Mahabbat. It's the state of love. And in that state of love, it begins to love what divinity loves. And it lets go of what the human loves. So a human might love, to go out and make trouble. And God wants to have harmony, have peace, and have, nature, everything in accordance with perfection. The human being wants to go out and break it, so we have to release those parts of ourselves that love things that keep us from the oneness of the love. And, most people, like you're saying, you have your daughter and you've fallen in love with your daughter, and all of a sudden there's a whole world opening up of love that, when you're younger, you're kamikaze, you'll do anything, right? But now you've got a daughter, and all of a sudden, wow, wait a minute. No, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to miss my daughter growing up, and I don't want to miss her having a daddy. And all of a sudden, the rights of love have overpowered the self. You see, that's what the heart's about. It's about the heart opening, and the highest love is into God. into having that love. When you have that, your life is so different. When you live from the self, you don't realize you're cut off and you're trying to find a way to connect, but you're cut off. But when your heart opens, it's like you're in the flow all the time, in the flow of love. You're connected all the time. There's beauty everywhere all the time. You're like living in a constant state of love. It's an incredible way of living. And it's much better than living. The self is transient. You have an experience, it's over. You go back and you suffer. Heart opening, you're in it all the time. You're just in love. It's amazing. Okay, that's the second station. Okay. The third station, you open the soul. You have to get soul conscious. Soul conscious, the soul is a light. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And the soul light is different than the heart light. It's different than the subtle light. It's the light of your own essential reality. So when you reach the soul, you actually start getting in touch with the spirits of everything. You reach the souls of others, of animals, of all sorts of things. Like you can't, it's there in a deep way. You're able to communicate with souls. And I'll just tell you a 2-minute story because I love my stories, as you can tell. But my house in California got raided by ants, and they were giving me a hard time. So I finally went down into the ground floor, got close to the ground, and I called the spirit of the ant queen. And I called her, and she finally came out. The spirit came out like a cloud in front of me, just kind of. And you have to see it. It was like a red cloud, and I yelled at it. I said, "Look," I said, "I don't want to hurt you or your ants, but you are not allowed in my house, and you are violating my sanctuary. And this is it. I've asked you to leave, but this is my final warning. If you don't stop it within 3 days, I'm bringing in an exterminator. We're going to exterminate your whole hive or whatever you call it, ant kingdom." So I don't know what you call them. So I waited the first day, the second day, nothing happened. The third day, I walk outside my house, the front door, and I have this rock path in front of my house. There were like, I don't know, about this wide, like maybe, I don't know, a foot wide, maybe a little bit less. There were like streams, like maybe, I don't know, maybe I can't remember, 3 or 4 streams of hundreds of thousands of ants that were leaving under my house. And they went on crossing my path for 24 to 48 hours. And you can imagine how many ants were in that house. It was incredible. And they left and they left and they left and they left and they were gone. And I never had another ant in my house. So the point is that when you can reach to the spirits of people, of animals, of anything really, it helps you to understand existence. You understand what existence is, and you understand why existence is there. What was that ant needing? What was her hive needing? What were we needing as human beings to have our house sacred? What did that ant need? It wanted a home too, but it was violating. And you could see that in that spirit. It was not a clean spirit. It was taking things it shouldn't take. So you have to, in learning the spiritual world, you understand the deeper roots of people. So the third level is understanding what moves people, what's the essence, how to deepen people, how to bring the spirits into purity. That's all the third station. When you complete that, then God will lift you up into the fourth station. That's a graduation. It's a grant. It's not given by a human being. It can be given through a human being, but it's given by God when God feels that you are ready because you have purified whatever God is asking you to purify. We don't know, but you have to find those places. Usually it's hidden materialism, it's hidden self. And if you cross those levels, then you enter into the godly world. And really, that's the beginning of mastery. Now you're really becoming a master. And then as you complete that, you will integrate that light of divinity inside of your being. And that light is your completion. Now you've become a master. Okay, and that's the first 4 stations. That's the fourth station is when that mastery happens. Now there's 3 further ones that go after that, which are also further. So I don't know if you want to talk about comatose tonight or not, but those are the higher stations that happen after.
Yeah, well, I'd love for you to talk about the further stations. It reminds me of Yogananda, the autobiography of a yogi, and so I've heard about it, and I'd like to believe it's possible. I've heard these stories, in writings and the life and teachings of the masters of the Far East and things like that. The stories are out there, and I have a couple questions. With the one where you're talking about, openness and love, like I think it's the second station, like opening up to the creator. I feel like I can do that in bits. And I've had these experiences where it's beyond space and time and reason and logic and all of that. But they're brief, Well, one of them was a longer process, maybe about 8 hours, but it's like it's such a different language. It's like trying to communicate with a giraffe or a dolphin. There's no way I can bring it back to this human form, and I haven't been able to get. So, are you saying that if you get to that space, that you're fully kind of in the enlightened stage? Because I've kind of felt like, that's almost like a myth. Maybe I'm too grumpy, and I'm like, I just, I can't. I'm not going to achieve that. I'm just giving up on that, and I'll just focus on being a good person because, you know, being happy or in that love state, it just seems beyond what's possible, and so I'd love for you to talk about that, um and then the higher realms. Yeah. So, and then, oh yeah, the second thing was, have you met anyone that kind of stays in that, like, because I find these people are not on the internet, you know what I mean? The people like doing it, they're really, so I'm curious if you've met some of those teachers who were like, that guy or that girl was the real deal, and maybe something you saw or experienced.
Yeah, many. I've met many, and they're there. And it doesn't mean that those people don't get challenged. They do get challenged, and they have to face, something. In fact, the further you go, the harder the challenges. I mean, you look at all the great masters; they've always been challenged with. Look at Christ; they're getting his challenges, or look at Moses and the Pharaoh. There are always great challenges when you reach mastery. So it's not that you don't get challenged; you don't have to deal with suffering, but it's not your suffering. You're dealing with the suffering that comes from people not accepting the truth. The truth comes out, it stirs them up, they attack, and then you have to carry that attack. You have to break through it. So that's unfortunately that's what the masters are here for. They're here to help people to break through. So I've met many, yes, and I would say, never give up. Where you give up is where you stop. In other words, if you give up at one realm, and if God gave you an experience of those realms, what you're telling me, then it means that God is saying to you, "Come find it." He wouldn't have shown it to you if it wasn't meant to happen for you. Come find me. You've got to do the work. Yeah, you're going to get challenged, and you're going to have things block you and hold you back and push you down and make you question everything. But never give up. But just remember, God is calling you back to your natural state of consciousness. And it is beyond time and space. And it's beyond all those things. He's calling. So stay strong. And we all have to stay strong though, because this is a time when, the war between light and dark on this planet is at a very high level, very strong timing. So we have to be strong, and we have to hold the light and the love and the care, and not allow any of that stuff to stop us from our birthright, which is to come back to the oneness.
I
So
love it. I appreciate that. I'll keep it in mind. I'll keep it in mind in my grumpy days. Yeah, it's like these little blips. I call them different things, but one of them is like wink from the universe. I feel like a lot of it is very subtle. The universe or God is always communicating with you. It is always there. They hit him. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. It's always there. And then if you're walking the path enough, it's earned, and you get like a universal wink from. To me, it's just that spiritual alignment of integrity. Are you the only thing we can really know is what we're intending, like our intention? Because you could say this is a cure for people, and you say, okay, it's great, and it works for 99 people, then one it doesn't. It's like, oh shoot, right? Or you could say, or then all of a sudden there's something better. Like information and reality and truth evolves. Even if you're reading a bunch of books, it's a bunch of other people's experiences, and you could say, well, I've read the truth of that book and I interpreted it this way. So all we really know, even when we experience something directly, then it goes into the memory bank, and that all gets hunky dory crazy real quick. If you ever try to interview someone, what just happened 1 minute ago when you're in the store? Was that person wearing a red shirt or a black dress? Like, oh man, I don't even know. What color were her eyes? I have no idea. How much was that? How much did you pay? I don't know. Right? We don't know what's going on here. So it's, there's so much we don't know. We know a sliver of a sliver, but the thing that we can know for sure, 100%, without a doubt, without a question, is our intent. That's it. Then we can also know if we're listening to ourselves and we're having integrity. There might be some other ones, and if because I use this analogy, so I'd love to hear what you think of my analogy. So we know for sure our intent, and then I think 99 times out of 100, we know if we're being in integrity or not. And a lot of the times we'll act out of integrity because we want this material thing, or we're worried about, if I don't do this, then I'm not going to have that need met, right? And that means you're not trusting in the creator, God of the universe, to say, you know what, I'm not going to do this thing that I know causes harm or harms my community, so I'm going to, do this instead. And so yeah, what do you think about that?
That was a mouthful. I got to kind of take all that in for a moment.
Yeah, what do you think
Man.
of that?
I think that you've hit the truth. I think you've hit the truth, and I think that you know hearing it and realizing it are two different things. I think it's like you have to realize it, and realization means, I think in your words, that integrity, that you're living that integrity all the time, and I'm a very strong believer in not doing harm. I don't like to do harm. I don't like to hurt people. Hurts me when I hurt somebody. Probably hurts me more actually. But anyways, so I think that we can learn to be in integrity, but learn to be incredibly kind to people and merciful. Like we don't have to hit them over the head with truth. I think there's enough of that going on in the world. I think it's about how do we realize it with love, so that as we step into it, we hold the integrity in ourselves, but we give it with such sweetness that nobody can say no to it. You know what I mean? That it's you give it with such love that everybody wants it. I think that's the secret of it.
That is a really beautiful point for I'd love you to elaborate, because I was talking to my friend, Dr. Edith Ubuntu Chan, who is a sweetheart. She's been trying to educate people since the beginning of this stuff and what's going on. Brilliant doctor, also educates kids to do paranormal things with incredible results, like stupid, amazing results of blindfold stuff. But she's telling me about this story where she's been trying to communicate with people, goes down to like a place where they believe very much in the vaccines and they believe in the mass and all this stuff. And she presented an opposing view based on truth with just honoring people. And she said, I went and honored them. We sang them a song, whatever you want to do. She's like, but, and then offered some of the truth with such love. All of them changed their mind. Now, so I'd love for you to elaborate that. So for me, I'm more direct. I've always just been direct. I'm just like, it's like a kind of like, it's more of like a blunt object. And
Uh,
then I get angry, when I just see stupidity and harm, I get angry. So what do you suggest for me? And what do you suggest for other people if we want to, and then maybe I can invoke like God or something, you know what I mean? Like speak through me in a compassionate way, because, I don't want this person to harm themselves and I want them to harm their kids. Here is information that will show you that. Here you go. Here it is, right? Because I've tried let's have an open dialogue. If you present me with better information, I will revise my view immediately. No problem. Since the beginning, has not happened. Not one discussion with a friend, an acquaintance, another person, where it was a respectful two-way dialogue where they presented better information to modify my perspective. They weren't able to overcome the information and proof that I was able to provide, to come to that view. And so it can get frustrating, especially when I'm getting attacked a lot. And so I do want to share the truth with people, and I do want to share it in a compassionate way, but sometimes I'm really challenged with that. So I'd love your 2 cents on how do we do this effectively? How do we share, something meaningful and truthful effectively when it might be the opposite of what they believe?
yeah. Well, when you're younger, not that you're young, but when you're younger, you've got a lot of passion. There's a lot of power, and your being wants to, tear down the mountains and, scream from the tops, But, as you start to purify those places, like you start to recognize that God really wants us to be careful with creation, and so because we're powerful and we have truth, how many teachers, religions have, beaten up other people because they have the truth. You know what I mean? How many people have died in the name of religion because, we have the truth? God doesn't want that. God wants, religions it's not supposed to be compulsory. Religion's supposed to be a choice. It's supposed to happen from a person's heart. So the greatest teachers recognize that it's the love that changes people. And so as a person grows and you recognize that power is on one hand, glorious, but on another hand, subtly creates separation and domination and control and not bringing the closeness, then you start saying, you know what, maybe there's a better way to carry this. So what we do is we use a chant. We say astaghfirullah al-azim, which means I ask for forgiveness from God the sublime. And by asking for forgiveness, we're saying, God, I recognize that even though I have the truth, that there's a way that maybe I'm not in oneness with somebody. Maybe subtly there's some kind of domination, or even they may be, I mean, even if it's not coming from me, maybe they're experiencing it. And so either way, I end up in separation. So God, teach me how to communicate in a way that only brings love, that only brings oneness, that only brings truth in a gentle way. I think when you start asking for that, God will teach it to you very quickly. I'm sure you'll catch it very quickly, and you'll see that love is 1,000-fold more powerful than power. Power doesn't change people; it scares people, but doesn't change it. But love changes people. Love actually changes people to something better.
That's a very beautiful answer and extremely helpful for me in my current life experience. And so it brings up a follow-up question. So if I am let's say disconnected in any way, one of the major issues I've always had is with just suffering, like, okay, there's supposed to be a God, a creator, right? And went to, was a Christian and studied spirituality and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, there's a creator, but why is there so much suffering? Why am I witnessing so much insane suffering? Why am I witnessing so much harm? Why do these systems really create such chaos and such evil? What is going on? Is it just am I in hell right now? I thought about one of those things. It's like, oh, maybe that's what it is with all this suffering, with so that's one of the things that's been very challenging. It's like, hey, you're harming that if I see someone harming someone, the martial arts, caveman wants to come out with a stick from my cave and just dunk them. Right. And so we've got these other scenarios where harm is happening, and just immediately I'm like, that, come on, so that's, I think, my main process. I have to replay the ridiculous words I just spoke, but I think you know what I mean, so maybe you can help with that.
Well, again, remember that the number one gift that God gave us is free will. And free will means the freedom to choose. That's what it's free will doesn't mean the freedom to do what we want. It's the freedom to choose to do what we want. So because of free will, the suffering on this planet is from ourselves. God give us free will. We're creating it, not God. God doesn't want us to suffer. God wants us to free us of suffering. The suffering comes from in our own beings. We have our own natures and we are creating suffering ourselves. That's the hell. We're creating hell for ourselves. How do we overcome it? Well, through going through it. You have to go through it to get to the other side. You have to find out what it is. And I'll tell you again a brief story about myself. After my first wife died of cancer, I began exploring really deeply into cancer. I wanted to try to understand, how do you heal it? Can it be healed? What do you do with it? And after a while, I remarried another woman, and a very beautiful woman, and younger than me. She was quite a bit younger. And as I spent time with her, I started to realize that I felt old. I started feeling old. I started feeling like maybe she really should be with somebody much younger, somebody more her age, somebody more beautiful, not somebody old like me. And that brought up a lot of pain for me. So as I sat with it, again, I was suffering, but the suffering came from my own system of beliefs that I was like, well, she should be with somebody younger, right? She'd be somebody more her age. But what I wasn't seeing was what God wanted me to see. So when I brought this suffering to God, God began to change it. It was like it started to move, it started to spin, it started to change inside my own being. And then as it changed, all of a sudden, what opened was the world of beauty. And I began to see beauty everywhere, and I saw beauty in me. And I started to see my own beauty. I saw who I was. I saw my own nature of beauty. So through the suffering of feeling old and not good, it changed into feeling I discovered my own beauty. I went through it to find out who I was, to see my own nature. So my point is that all suffering, when you go through it, if you go through it in the right way, you transcend it. If you go through it in the wrong way, then you hate it. If something happens and you go into hatred of it, you haven't learned anything. You've gone into hell. But if you turn it around and you go through it, like if you go through, I went through my feelings of ugliness and it turned into beauty. If you go through your feelings of violence, it turns into compassion. You go through your feelings of separation, it turns into mercy or it turns into oneness. Each of these things are gifts that take somebody through to the other side. And what happens is that people stop. They don't go through the lessons. And because they don't go through the lessons, suffering stays for them individually. But it's not only individual. Every group has a collective teaching. So the US has a collective teaching. India has a collective teaching. Christians have a teaching. Jews have a teaching. Muslims have a teaching. Hindus have a teaching. Everybody has collective teachings. God takes that collective. You're part of a group. You're part of, let's say, being Jewish. All of the Jewish collective comes together and it creates a weight. If that weight is good, the entire Jewish life lifts up. If it's not good, the entire Jewish gets pulled down. So there are collectives that are going on within us as well. Every group we belong to, we are part of that collective. You and I are part of the male group. We're carrying male collectives. You are Americans. We carry American collectives. You know what I'm saying? But we might be different religions. So you would carry the collective of your religion. I would carry the collective of mine. So collectives create a lot of suffering for people comes from those collectives. You see, so we have to understand that, and we don't get out of that. In other words, that collective is part of what we're part of, where we have to work with it. Now, we might get through it ourselves, and we will start to change the collective, but it doesn't mean the collective will fully change. You see what I mean? We make impact in that collective. We begin to change it. Like we might bring more mercy and love into men. Men, men are getting hit with patriarchal, violence and power and control. In many ways, rightfully so. And we have that as men. And so to learn to be more careful, learn to be more gentle, to learn to be more loving as men, that's a good thing. You see, we're part of that collective. Now you and I might learn to do that, but we're only the beginning of a small iceberg of a billion men that have to actually learn how to do that. See, so it takes time for it to stream through a billion people. It's not going to happen in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. It might take 100 years, but it will happen through time. So suffering is from ourselves and from our collectives. I think you're muted, Matt. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
That was very well said, and I appreciate all of that. I'm just kind of reflecting on it. So I love the idea, and the favorite thing that you said was talking about giving it to God with each issue, like, show me a way through this, because it is individual for every single person. It's a first player game here, and so when we remember how to do that, we're gonna have to go through it. We can't control everything, and whatever you're processing, right? We get to choose how to react to that, right? How is it? Sitting with us? Are we? And I think that suffering is also the fuel into the action, right? When we kind of sit with it, we know the difference between right and wrong and good and evil, and then we can go take an action to build the thing that is good, right? So to not be weighted down by that awfulness. And there's so much to be improved on this planet. There's so much suffering. There's so much opportunity to build something better, to improve upon the systems that we have here, to exercise our free will that is in harmony with each other in our communities, and that's the thing, again, that we can control. And so as we get challenged with our observations of reality, to seek support from God the creator, say, show me a perspective in this, that I can remain useful, that I can get out of this anger, that I can get out of this anger for this system, or whatever the case is. That's the thing for me, is like, why is it set up like this? Why am I observing this? And so learning how to come to peace for that, with that, is going to be important for me. Um, I'd love for you, if you want to add on anything, go ahead, but I'd love for you to speak on the top three realms as well, because it reminds me of the autobiography of a yogi, where Yogananda's teacher dies, and then he comes back, basically after he's dead, and he talks to him about the spiritual realms. And he said, yeah, well, after death, it's just like I mentored you here. Well, it goes beyond this into higher realms. And I've been getting a lot into law recently, looking for understanding and solutions for why this planet is the way it is, and why they're really making us feel like slaves right now, especially in Canada. You're not allowed to leave your house, quote unquote. I don't listen, but you're not allowed to leave your house. You can't get fresh air. You have to stay at home. Like, people are listening to this. You can't go outside. What do you mean? What? And one of the things, I gave an analogy, and whatever people's beliefs are, they can have, but wearing a mask, I have a medical issue, so I don't. And so if somebody says anything to me, one of the comedy ones, I was trying to defuse the situation, but I say, oh, hey, are you God? And they'll say, no. Well, then I don't answer to you then. And so the God is going to be the one that tells me if I can go in and out of my house. you know and one of the other things that I think about often, and it's been helpful, is you want to be on the side of good and help and community. And there's a quote by Rudolf Steiner that says, anything that seeks to restrict or bind by definition is Luciferian. And that quote helped me for when I'd make my choices, you know because I'm like, I'm going to do this choice. And look, you can be 20 feet away. I'll stay whatever you want. I'll be, oh, you can be cool, but I'm not going to try to make you do anything. And so, anyway, so I digressed intensely there into my personal world, but I'd love for you to chat about the three higher spiritual realms, because I feel like, that would be I'm just curious about that compared to what it said in that book.
Uh, you open up on somebody.
Okay, yeah, you can add on to that if you want. I got sidetracked to my own world there for a second.
Why not? The bottom line, creation repeats itself. If you go back and you look at it, go back to Noah. Noah's on the boat, and he's fighting the people of his town, or I don't know where Noah was from actually, but he was, they're all telling him there's no God, and you don't have to do anything, just do what you want. And Noah spent 1,000 years trying to get them to listen. They never listened, and then we got the flood. So by the way, I don't know if you heard that they found the Ark up at Mount Judy. They actually have pictures of it. You can see the whole thing, the qubits, everything exactly what it's supposed to be. It's all there. So anyways.
Is that recent? I heard about that a bunch of years. I thought like years ago they said they found the Ark, but you're saying they said it again, like how legit do you think this is? Like 90% legit, 50% legit, 100%?
I think it's 100%.
You think it's legit?
I think it's legit.
Well, man, we are in weird times right now, so who knows? It wouldn't surprise me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nothing right now. Nothing will surprise me. You look at Genesis and the Bible, and it's like mark of the beast 666. Like how? What? Like why is this so accurate? Why is this so accurate? And then if you study the evil people, then you really kind of know what's going on. So I'll digress again. So don't let me digress. So continue on your thought. I like where you're going.
Uh, the point is that all souls are trying to get back to God, and this creation has been created again and again and again to challenge us. We are being challenged to see what we do with it. And I agree, we're in some of the heaviest challenges of all time right now. And this is even if you go back to Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. He said that in his revelation, when they were fighting for something underneath the sands of Saudi Arabia, he said there's a time in the future they're all going to be fighting for what's underneath these sands. And he said that's going to be the ending times. That's going to be when all this stuff comes through. So even back then, 1,500 years ago, they were talking about this time. And he said that this time is going to be one of the most difficult times of humanity. So from my opinion, we're living in probably one of the most difficult times the human race has been in. Okay, that being said, it's really no different than any other time. You know, you know what I mean? For each one of us, we're dealing with oppression, fear, control, separation. It's always been tough. If you go back to the French Revolution or you go back to Greek, there was always fighting and always oppression and always people doing things. It's been going on forever. So why? Because the human being needs to find truth, needs to find goodness, it needs to, in the face of hatred, to sow love, in the face of pain, to find caring, to find gentleness, to find forgiveness, in the face of darkness, to bring light. That's how God teaches us. So this system has been going on for forever. So I think that we just have to know that we are in a strong time, but we're not any different than any other time, really. And that those of us that seek the highest, that will seek to find the answers through the darkness of these times. And that answer is our love, and its beauty, and its peace, and its kindness, and its truth, and its wisdom, and its knowledge, and its being able to see and hear and understand the words of God and the world of divinity, and to be able to realize the unity and the enlightenment and the freedom. That is what it's about. We're all here to find that. So um, that being said, we'll talk about those three upper stations. So in Sufism, when you reach the fourth station, we would say you're a Sufi master. Okay, so fourth station means that you've reached the unity. You are enlightened. By Buddhist terms of enlightenment, you have enlightenment. Your mind is enlightened. Your heart is also full of the oneness of God, and you're living in that state of divine proximity. Now, if you continue, then you go into what we call the world of the hidden. The hidden is kind of the world of how God works. So when you understand how God works, you begin to understand the nature of divine creation, how God creates existence. And you actually begin to participate with it. God begins to teach you and make you part of it, and you become the hands of God. We say that the person in that fifth station, they start to become the hands of God, the eyes of God, the ears of God, the feet of God. They're walking in God all the time. And if you complete that station, then you enter into the sixth station. That's where you become what I call a wisdom master. A wisdom master means that essentially the worlds of Gnostic revelation are opened, a Gnostic inspiration. You're given access to wisdom about pretty much anything in existence. God can show it to you in a heartbeat. And so you can understand why somebody's sick. You can understand why something happens that you wouldn't even think of what it is. God can show it to you in one moment. And so the Gnostic, this sixth station, is very high level of really becoming a master. And then if you go further, you enter into the seventh station. We call that the station of the guide. And when you enter the seventh station, you become a perfected master. So you have the Sufi master, you have the wisdom master, and you have the perfected master, who enters into the state of carrying the pure reality of divinity. Now, really, in a way, you become the word of God. In other words, God speaks through you, and you become the speaker for God. This is like the final station where God speaks through you because you're meant to guide and to help humanity evolve. So you're sent back, and you guide people through your words, through your insight, through your wisdom, through the understanding that God gives you. And that's the perfected master. And that's, of course, the highest state. That's the seventh level.
Wow, that's incredibly fascinating. And as a side note, I'm curious, what's the Bible of Sufism?
there
Is
is
there one?
no there's no real Bible. Uh, Sufis use everything. I mean, if you study any of the religious texts, you have to look deep. The Quran has incredible teachings. The Bible, amazing. The Torah, unbelievable what's in there. You have to be able to get through these texts to get to the truth that was revealed in them. And also get through with the places people have changed them. Because a lot of these texts have been changed, by people trying to control people. So you have to break through that stuff and get to the truth behind it. So I think the Sufi learns from everything. The textbook of the Sufi is creation itself. Learning from everything in creation.
And are the Sufis sometimes the ones that wear the hat? Tall
Yeah,
hat?
some of them do. Yeah.
So on that note, when I was talking to Carlos Barrios, my Mayan elder friend, if you go back to I don't know what episode it is, it's when I went to Guatemala and they were doing the Mayan fire ceremony. They had opened up Tikal and they weren't allowed to do their ceremony there for about 20 years or something. So it was the first time since the genocide they were allowed to do the Mayan fire ceremony. So I went back for that and it was very fascinating. I learned a lot from Carlos. And one of the times we had a discussion, we went out for dinner and he was talking about in his early days as a teaching, he was out in Egypt, I think, and he met a bunch of Sufis and he got invited to this place and they were all wearing those hat things and doing the circle dance. And he said
Yeah.
they started to levitate. And then when he told me that, my face was like, what? I was like, oh my God. And he goes, that's the face that I made. So, it does seem like there's enough of these stories to go around. And I feel like it is a little bit like Doctor Strange, where we live in a society that just wants everything quick and easy and logical. And there is a path, there is a spiritual path. It doesn't mean that you're going to become a master with special powers, although that would be great. But what if that special power was increased understanding and self love for yourself? And connection with spirit to create good in a community where you see that firsthand. Why is that not a special power enough? Right? It's like people want to do this meditation to reach enlightenment so that they're more powerful, but really enlightenment is more of a state of mind, a state of wholeness and connection that's given to you from spirit. That's priceless, right? And so I feel like this culture that we live in, they want it very quick, they want it very easy. They don't want to do anything for it. And they also don't want to sacrifice anything for it. So, to walk the path each and every day, to live in alignment with yourself and ask the creator or God to be guided in a way that is supportive for your own spiritual growth and for the growth of humanity, I feel like is a, important step. So I don't know. You want to comment on that? I have no finisher.
No, I think that's exactly right. The ability to just discover love is a miracle in itself. And to live love is an incredible way of living, and then to reach awareness of the soul and be able to be in the spiritual worlds is incredible. And then, if you reach the world of God, to live in that world is just, you know, there's nothing like it. There is nothing, and it doesn't mean you have to have powers. You don't have to be, levitating and doing all that stuff. What you just need to do is love, and have the love and help. I think that's the greatest power of all. I really think love, at the end of the day, I think love is the greatest power of all. And I was looking at watching Harry Potter with my kids the other day, and all these great masters, doing this and doing that, but behind it, confused, don't know what to do, don't know how to deal with it. The dark was coming, dark forces are more powerful. It's like at the end of the day, having all these powers doesn't mean you have wisdom or love or the ability to bring peace. And that's in some ways I think the highest, isn't it? Isn't the highest to be able to just bring the peace?
Yep, absolutely. And maybe that metaphor is almost a trick, right? It's almost a trick in materialism because we chase this materialism and sacrifice our soul and our integrity. And it's the same thing with these quote unquote powers, and that's the benefit that I've had in my life is training in martial arts and having that understanding of mind, body, spirit. Is like, yeah, it's really cool to know what your body is capable of, right? But it isn't about, going around busting heads. Although when you're a kid, you're thinking about it and it might be a bit of a motivator. But adding that spiritual element, what are you capable of? But deep peace, connection with God, that's worth anything. It's like, hey, yeah, I can fly, like that movie Hancock back in the day, which no one saw with Will Smith, or like a superhero power. I can fly, but I have no spiritual connection and I'm miserable and I hate everything. And I've seen people do this too, have extraordinary abilities, but they're also miserable. This is often in sports. It's often in sometimes some, yogis, right? People really like torture themselves to have these superhuman abilities that they think are supposed to be spiritual, but at the end of the day they're left suffering because it was to acquire something. They did it to get, right? And these gifts, if they are given to you, they're given, they're just granted, and then you get to wield them as like, oh wow, this was neat, this is unexpected. The real bread and butter is my connection with God and the creator, and that inner world that I'm a part of as I experience this outer world. But now I've got like this new tool. It's almost like, growing up and you're a kid and, you're this child and God's like, yeah, I'll give you this car or I'll give you this tool, but you're still a child and you haven't earned it and you just want things. It's like, daddy, give me a Ferrari, and that's like what's going on in the spiritual world. Give me the car, give me the car. It's like, no, you don't deserve it. Yeah, I'm grateful, but so I don't know. What do you think of that? You got kids? Does that happen to you?
I do have kids. That has happened to me. I don't know what to say about that. Honestly, I think that's part of growing up. Um, we again we have to understand what's needed. As adults and as elders. As we start to become elders, we have to know how to help our kids. We have to know how to help this world. There's so much going on, and I've got a bunch of clients. Their kids are suicidal. They're wanting to leave. They can't handle it. How do you guide those children to be safe? How to have love, and how do you walk them through this time when they're getting beat up in school and everybody's so mean and everybody's putting them down, and how do you teach them to be strong in who they are? That's our job as elders. We have to help our children. We have to help our children grow in the right way. They have to be kind and loving and wise, but they also have to be strong and capable, fearless and able to stand for the truth. That's our job. So, I don't know. I think it's not an easy work we have to do. But when we become a parent, we start to become part of that elder group. We're now shepherding these new lives. We have to help them be the best they can be. So,
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. It's they're great challenges, and maybe this is why I've become so much wiser in the last 2 years. I've just noticed my wisdom has just really peaked. No, that hasn't happened at all. I'm testing everything I think I know. It's like, do I know this? I don't know. Shoot, we'll see.
that's
But
good.
yeah, but it is a whole new testing ground. I had Tim Freak on a bunch of years ago, and he said when I had a daughter, it just tested what I thought spiritually. If it didn't apply to her and her life, then it wasn't something that I was going to use, right? And so they're really fantastic teachers, and there is a great deal of suffering and help that a lot of people need. And so if we can participate in some sort of way, I kind of say it's like a storm is here and you need a floating boat that works and you can save others, but yours has to be solid too, because they are rocky times, and that's going to give the opportunity for people to have an opportunity to do it themselves, to give them a little reprieve, a little help, a little support, and saying, hey, this is possible. And so very, very challenging times. And this has been wonderful. I could talk to you all day. This has been pleasant. And your book, as I went through the chapters, often when I'm interviewing, I'll go through the chapters of a book and just look at all the stuff that you have listed there. So where can people find more about you, and is there anything that you wish that we had talked about, or anything you want to leave the listeners with, I'm happy to stay and listen.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me at drjaffemd.com, drjaffemd.com, or the Institute of Spiritual Healing. I think we're also at .com or .org, I can't remember. But either one of those, you can find me there. The piece I want to end with has to do with kind of what you're talking about, which is we do need a ship of safety, and we are in very turbulent times. And turbulent means that, there's all sorts of forces that are trying to create all sorts of things on this planet, and it's leading one way or another way. And, how do we navigate through that without losing our connection and our joy and our spirits and the truth within our hearts? How do we navigate through this stuff? So we need help. And this, I know this is going to sound crazy, but for me, the highest ship of safety are the teachings that are directly coming from God. In other words, what God brings through is exactly what's needed in any time, in any place. And it's protective and it's helpful and it will help you and God will help you. So what I want to say for people is, learn to make that connection in yourself so that you get that guidance. Secondly, that there have been many great teachers on this planet, Jesus and Moses and Krishna and Muhammad, and many great teachers. And all of those teachers, really, what they had was access into the divine. What they were really doing is bringing through divine revelation into this world. So really, we can learn from them as well. And not necessarily can we learn what people have done with them, because once they die, people change it and make it what they want. But when they're alive, those teachings are very real. And my teacher, Siddhi, used to say, if you knew the religion of God, you would see that all religions are the same, that there is only one religion. God doesn't change what God does because somebody's, from a different part of the world. God's teachings are the same, and they're the teachings of love, and the teachings of truth, and the teachings of oneness, and the teachings of beauty and peace. And that's for all people. So my statement is, no matter what your religion is, whatever your truths are, whatever your spiritual paths are, if you really look deep and you have that deepest connection to the one, you'll see that there's no difference. It's the same. And that's how we have to live. And I think as a group, if we start letting go of these boundaries and instead we live from that place of oneness, the spirituality, the religion of oneness, I think we'll see a way of bringing peace on this planet. It's going to come through that. And I think we're being tested as a group so that we find that. I think that's really what's going on. With this, the time of separation has to end. And this is how it's happening. So I hope people will look deep for their connection, not get caught in separation and traditions and religions and this and that and the other thing, and find the truth inside of it. And I think if we do that, then we have the real religion. That's it. And by the way, that's what's going to heal you as well. That's the source of all healing. So that's my final statement, and I hope that brings some value to your listeners.
I love it. Very beautifully said. I want to ask, so for clarity, what did you say the root of healing is?
Well, the root of healing comes from the knowledge of God. In
Mm.
other words, if God shows you um, something, I'll give you again. Can I tell you a story, or are you?
Yeah, no, I'll stay here all day. I want to say you're on the boat. You're on boat time, so your life is good.
Yeah.
You're relaxed in Florida boat time, man. I'm in lockdown Toronto. Not a lot
Uh,
of this. This is a treat for me.
um, um,
I, yeah, I'm gonna be coming down for some boat time anyway here if they let me out of the country. But yeah,
yeah,
please tell me your story.
that's great. I'm sorry you're locked down. That's rough. Well, here's a story of a lady. She had a skin cancer, and she asked me to heal the skin cancer. And she went into the dermatologist, and they cut it out. It was a basal cell. It wasn't anything worse, thank God. And when she got it out, she had the feeling that something wasn't right. So she came to me. She asked me for healing. Meantime, she went back in, they retested it. They found that this tumor had like octopus tentacles that had kind of spread under the skin. It was kind of moving around in there. So she was kind of panicky about it, because she was afraid she's going to die from this thing. The basal cell are usually pretty benign, but anyway, she had a lot of fear around it. So uh, we started working on her issues, and she was seeing the physicians, she was getting help. They decided to do the Mohs procedure, where they go in and they deeply cut out the whole thing, and which I think was a good choice. So she went in to have that. She had that scheduled in about 7 weeks. So in the meantime, she worked with me for 7 weeks. And when we got into the tentacles of the disease, what we found was it was all about control. It was about control. She was feeling controlled by her parents. She would control others because that's what she learned. She felt that she was in control. She was safe. When she didn't have control, she was out of control. She wasn't safe. She was going to get hurt. It's all about control. And eventually we got inside those images. And in the images, she hit a place where she said, I feel like I'm in this computer room. All I'm seeing are computers. And I'm inside my mind, and I'm seeing how I'm the master controller of everything. And I said, well, what does God show you with that? She said, I have to trust God, that God's in control. It's not me. And that moment, she let it go. She released it. And remember, I talked about that beautification, that descent. Incredible light came in. It was awesome. Like the whole room was just filled with brilliant light. It was almost like you couldn't even open your eyes. It was so bright. And then it went right into the tumor. It was in her shoulder, and just kind of exploded. Like the shoulder exploded with light, and this light came inside of her. When she went in for the procedure a week later, tumor had disappeared. It was completely gone again. So what we found was that you protect the people, you protect the people. Medicine, you work with it. You need to protect them, but you need that ship of safety. But once they connected to that divine light, and God showed her that I'm in control, not you. Trust me. Let go of your humanity. Trust in something bigger than you. And she let go of her own personal control, and she trusted divinity. That beautiful light came down and exploded it, and disease disappeared. I would say probably almost immediately. So this is what I was saying about when I we have to learn to connect to that light. We have to be guided by it. We have to live with it. Ultimately, we have to merge with it. We have to become one with it. When you do that, God will take you under God's hand. God will take you by your hand. God will become your direct teacher. And God will evolve you and take you into the oneness, into the unity, into those seven stations. And you will arrive. You'll have the arrival, and you will be an incredible force of good on this planet. Because wherever you go, you'll bring goodness to everybody you come. And again, this is ultimately what we're all here doing. We're all here trying to get to those states. But we have to learn to trust in that light, to trust in that guidance, and not to listen to our minds and ourselves and all that stuff. Listen to the one. That's the secret. That's the way through.
Amazing, beautiful. I'm glad you shared that last story. That's ridiculous. I'm sure you have so many more of those. So that's incredibly powerful stuff. I've enjoyed this entire podcast. I hope everybody listening did, and will check out your book, because like I said, I went through it. It looks incredible, and I love how the root message is getting your connection to the creator. And I think maybe as I mature in this evolution of myself wanting a deeper connection with spirituality, it's like this simple thing that's there, like have God as your master teacher. Stupid. Why does it take you so long to figure out stupid things, man? But as long as one foot in front of the other. I always call it my dumb brain. I only know like a little bit, so put your faith in the creator, and it's the smartest thing you can do. And whether it's a small thing you're working on or a big thing, right? It's always going to come back to that, because it is ultimately surrender. You could go down go down the street and get smoked by a car. You could live in Canada, get locked down, but then you could be in Florida and have these crazy bio mosquitoes come out. So we don't know what's going on. So God's gonna have to do something about those stupid things too. So, so this is a wild and wacky world, but I appreciate you and coming on the show and for everything you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. You're a wonderful human being, and you have the rare gift of wanting to learn. It's a beautiful gift, and I hope you share that, and people learn to learn through you and through what you're bringing them. And thank you for bringing that to the people.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, it's great to be connected. We'll stay connected as we move through this. So hopefully we'll be in, like I said, better times where, I'm doing my trips down to Florida. That's we have, what do you call it? Snowbirds. You're probably
Yeah.
annoyed by the Canadians coming down and just messing up your nice little neighborhoods, but you know, I'll be there soon enough for a visit. Come pick me up on your boat.
You're welcome. Welcome to come down, and we love Canadians. You're welcome. All you're welcome. Don't you're not getting turned away by me or any of us. You're welcome.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, thanks so much for today and for your work in the world. We'll stay connected and thank